like a lot of people that came into the industry, I had that Cinema Paradiso moment when I was very young, that magic of being in the cinema and seeing these, extraordinary images, and just felt from a very early age I wanted to be part of that process. I mean, but I didn't quite know as what. It's just that there was a certain magic, and it was always this form of escapism, and just the feeling that one wanted to be part of the machinery, the mechanics of how filmmaking happens. So it wasn't, if you like, a starry-eyed thing. It was just more about the fact that this was an extraordinary. It was just an extraordinary thing that you would go and pay to go and watch and be part of. And so for ages, I then worked out what on earth could I do? What would there be that I would be able to do within this industry? Because I'm completely incapable of taking a photograph. I can't record any sound or anything like that. And then I read somewhere in a book about a film editor decides how much of a black car and a white car you show in a car chase. And so I just thought, well, how difficult can that be? But then, retrospectively, what happened was I realised that editing is about ideas. It's about, I suppose, intellectualising a thing and trying to find emotion within something. So, strangely, without really thinking about it, it became the perfect thing for me because it doesn't require an awful lot of technical ability. It doesn't require to know how, so you don't need to know the mechanics of being able to shoot something, so you don't need to understand the workings of lighting of cameras. It's just you, basically, and material, and working with a director. So, retrospectively, it became the perfect place for me because it was just about ideas, I suppose. I've been very fortunate over the years to work with an eclectic mix of film directors, from Peter Greenaway, Shane Meadows. I've had a very long collaboration with Jan Demange, who we worked together from his very first outing in television up to 71. And again, I was just very fortunate to meet him at the very beginning of his career and could see that there was a great cinematic talent at work. And to be able to go through that process to him then making a film was great. And that's what I like. I like connecting with directors that are very early on in their journey, because I think that's where the most interesting films are made. I've worked both ways of being on location and making an assembly as the shooting is happening. I've also been in this position where I've come onto a project after it's been shot, and so or taken over a project, which I said maybe had one editor before, and so you're taken on board to give it a fresh pair of eyes. My preference always is to be there at the beginning, because I like the unfolding. I like to see how the material comes in. I don't like being on set as such, but I like being in the location. Because I think for an editor, being objective is the key thing. So I tend not to get involved with anybody in production. So I will have a daily conversation with the director because of rushes, possibly the DOP, because sometimes you need to technically talk about certain stuff. But on the whole, I tend to remain remote. But I do like being there as the film is coming in. So I do think working and building an assembly while the shooting is happening is very valuable. And also I'm an editor that tends to sort of go for it quite early on. So I tend to do more editing during the shooting period than maybe others might. Because I think for me, there's always this thing about no matter how much I look at stuff, I only really know until I do it. And so in a sense, I need to find out for myself how something's working by really digging into the detail very early on. That's always been a strange one for me because, again, I tend to be somebody, I like to sort of first and foremost deal with what I've got. And I always sort of think that whatever you do get at the time of the principal photography, if you should be able to make it work from that. Now, obviously there are times, there are certain things that crop up, things get truncated, scenes get merged, whatever, so some bridging shots or some details maybe are required. So I don't, if during the shoot I feel as though I'm really missing something, then I will ask for it during the time of shooting. In terms of pickups or additional shooting, once the shoot has happened, I tend not to be a fan of those, because to me it's a bit like ADR. They're things that stick out, and I don't like that. I do feel that everything should come from that principal photography period. I know that's not always possible. So you usually find that at that time you've jumped on the merry-go-round and there are so many people voicing their opinion anyway, and you're just one of many voices that are chipping in. So I still try to make everything work with what has come from that principal period rather than getting new stuff. Of course, if one does get new stuff, of course you become part of that process, but usually that's a conversation that comes from the director, from the producers, whatever.